Hi guys, and welcome to another tech story. Today we're going to talk about how to build a simple calculator using Python. This is going to be a console app. In order to follow along this tutorial, you need four things. You need to know basic programming, you need to know basic Python, as in how to create a variable, how to print, how to run a Python file. You need to have an IDE or a text editor. And you need to have Python installed on your computer. For me, I'm using Visual Studio Code, but feel free to use whatever IDE you want. Without any further ado, I'm gonna start the project. So the first thing you need to do is to create a new file, a new Python file. So I'm gonna name this app.py. Now the first thing we need to do is to get user input. Get the user input. You want to get the initial user input, so we're going to create a variable and I'm going to call it initial memory, init mem for short, and this is going to be an integer. So anything that comes here is going to be converted into integer, and we're going to invoke the input function to ask the user to enter their input. And we're going to write a message to prompt the user to enter their input, and I'm going to say enter the first value, for example. So that's out of the way. After that, we need to have an operation, as in add or multiply or divide and all that good stuff. So I'm going to create a variable called operation and I'm going to leave it empty. We're going to use that later. Now that we have the initial memory and operation, we want the calculator to keep going. So to keep going until the user enter quit as the operation. So in order for something to keep going until a certain condition is met, we're going to use a while loop. So we'll do a while operation doesn't equal quit. So as long as the operation doesn't equal quit, do the following. Now we need to actually get the operation. So the first thing we do is we're going to get the user input for the operation to be used. Here we go. And we created the operation variable already, so we're gonna set that to an input. So we're gonna prompt the user with an input, and we're gonna say enter the operation, for example. Feel free to write whatever you want. So, and we're gonna write what kind of operation, just to remove any confusion. Add, multiply, sub for subtract, div for divide, and quit. So this is good. After that, we're gonna check again. We're gonna do an if operation is not equal quit. So we're checking if the operation that is entered is not quit. And if it's not quit, so if the operation is not quit, we're going to create a second number value and we're going to prompt the user to enter the second number for the operation. We're going to name this second. And this is also going to be an integer. So it's going to be converted into integer. And we're going to prompt the user to enter the second, enter a value, just enter a value. So that is good. And after that, we're going to check what kind of operation was this. So we'll do another if. So if operation equal to add, we'll do the following. We'll get the initial memory variable that we created, and then we're gonna add this initial memory to the second variable that we created here inside the while loop. So with that done, we want to print this to the user, so we're going to use the print function, and we're going to say in this print function there is, and then we're going to enter the number after this. But in order for the number to be displayed within the print function, it needs to be converted back to a string. So here, if you see here, we're getting the number as integer and the initial memory is integer. So in order to be displayed here, we need to convert it back to a string. So we're gonna use the function string, and between brackets we're gonna put the variable initial memory, and that will display that. So it will say there is this plus again, and we're going to say in the memory. So I'm gonna copy the operations to save time, and here we go. We have multiply, and then we have divide, subtract. Now, since this is Python, indentation is a very important thing. It's not like Java or JavaScript or other programming languages. Python read indentation actually, so it's not just a visual thing. It actually make a difference. So it look for the if statement, and then it goes inside the if statement, and by inside it expected to be indented inside. So we need everything to be indented for Python to understand. So this is the first if, and within this there's all these f's, and these f's need to be indented on the same line. But I'm gonna use, instead of if, I'm gonna use elif for all of them. There's elif, which means else if, elif, and I'm gonna indent this back, indent back, and here, just so everything on the same line. So here the first one is add, after that we're gonna do subtract, and that's gonna be minus the initial memory minus the second, so we're gonna subtract that from that, and then we have the multiply, and this means the initial memory times the second, and then we have the division, which means the initial memory divided by the second, and then in the end I want, after all this, if the user actually enter quits after the while, I want to display what's in memory or what's stored in the initial memory here. So we're gonna go on the same indentation line as the while loop, so the first line here, and we're gonna do a print. So there is, but we're gonna change this to program. The program has finished with this in memory. So, okay, let's take it for a test drive and see if it works. I'm gonna press play here to start the file. You can also write python app.py or whatever file you created, and that will also run the file. So enter the first value, 1, we're going to do an add, enter value 2. We're going to do division by 1, still 3. And then we're going to do a subtract 1, so that's 2. What else do we have? We're going to do a multiply by 100. That's 200. Then then subtract 6. That's 194. Then we're going to do quit. And here we go, the program, it has finished with 194 in the memory. But as we can see, there's spacing problems within the second. Enter value and semicolon and space, and here we need a space here. Okay, we need a space here. So if you're using Visual Studio, you could just highlight here with your mouse and just press Control D on your keyboard, and it's gonna jump to the similar line, and just move your mouse. Move your keyboard arrow front and backward, and then you can write whatever you want in all the lines you highlighted. So we're just adding a space to make it look nice. And the memory also needs a space. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna clear the console and then try this again. We're gonna do python app.py and enter. The first value is 5. The operation is add, and the second value is 100. The operation is multiply, and the value is -10. So now there is 1050 minus in the memory. We're gonna do add. Let's do a multiply again by -10. That should give us a positive number. There we go. And then we're gonna divide this by 10. Yeah. So and go. That was a very simple calculator. In the next video, I'm gonna create an undo operation, so that should be interesting. And after, I'm gonna refactor all the code to functions to make it more efficient. And finally, we're gonna refactor the whole code and use classes and object-oriented programming. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.